This will not backfire.
And that's when it all went down.
Yeah.
So scene one, take one, Mark.
Hey, all you Firebase developers. Welcome to another episode of Ask Firebase, the show where we answer your burning Firebase questions. I'm Jen Person, your host, and today is a very special episode because I have two co-hosts here. I have Sebastian and Rachel, and go ahead and tell me a little bit about what it is that you do here.
Yeah, I'm Sebastian, and I work on SDKs for Firebase, mostly on Firestore, but I also do work for the real-time database and the storage SDKs.
I'm Rachel. I work on Firebase security rules.
Great. So this is super exciting. I'm having you on the show today to talk about GDPR, right? And sort of broadly privacy, because this issue comes up all the time, every day with Firebase. And I'm really not an expert in this area. I wouldn't say that none of us are experts in this area.
None of us are lawyers.
None of us are lawyers. So this isn't any sort of legal advice. But I think that this really does touch upon some of the really common questions that we see with how to use Firebase, in a way that is secure and private and compliant with something like GDPR, right?
That's it?
Yeah.
You ready to answer some questions?
Yes, of course.
Yep.
Awesome. So our first question is that I optimize the structure of my data for the reads I would need to support the UI. And now that makes it pretty difficult to find and remove user data. What are my options?
This is a pretty common use case. The thing that you could do is start maintaining an index of the location of a user's data. So in the same database that you're already using, when you complete, say, a write to the, like say a user creates a profile, now you're going to write to a new place in your database the location of that profile information. And then when a user requests that you export their data to them or that they need to delete all of their data, you can go look at that list of all the locations of their data.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. This could sort of fall under the kind of denormalization that we do a lot of times with the real-time database in Cloud Firestore, right? Where it might sort of look a little bit like you're repeating data, but in this case, you're keeping a list of where that other data is.
Right.
Yeah. But you also need to make sure that as you're denormalizing this data, if you're deleting user data, you need to delete this index as well. So
Yes.
the more data you store, the trickier it gets.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so if you're denormalizing it, you have to remove it from all those different locations, and then at the end, also remove the index to it.
Yep.
Wow. You ready for another question?
Let's do it.
All right. If I delete data from a Firebase backend, what happens?
That's actually a pretty tough question to answer correctly. So we'll be really vague. And then if users are more interested, there's lots of information about this on our website. And there are white papers to explain the different stages of deletion in Google Cloud.
So we don't just take a single CD-ROM that has their information on it and
We take it out and we break that CD-ROM. And
throw it in the garbage.
Yeah.
There's just a garbage bag full of them.
So in practice, it's complicated because there are backups and there are caches, and in order for all those, we don't want to delete things from backups immediately, right? You want a little time because maybe you have to restore data. So removing data from every place that we store data is a pretty involved process. That's why it takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, so deletion usually propagates in stages. And every product publishes how long it takes for data to actually get deleted once you issue the call to delete data. So if you're offering your users the ability to delete their data, you also need to take that into account. And you can't promise them that the data is immediately gone.
Right. I'm learning so much already. This is great. Where do I find a list of the regulations that Firebase complies with?
The best source is probably our user privacy page that we've linked to here on this video. And if you scroll, it's an entire page that tells you about the data we store, our retention policies, and it also has a list of all the different government regulations that each product complies with.
There's a lot there, right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to digest it.
Digest that alphabet soup. Our next question came to us from Twitter, and we have an indie developer who wants to know about, complying with GDPR and Google Analytics. Do you have any advice for them on how GDPR works with Google Analytics for Firebase?
Yeah, so if you are using Google Analytics, then you should know that there's some data that we are collecting for every user on every app install. And we list all that information on our privacy terms. If you want to get consent from your users to collect that kind of data, you should look at those terms, and then you should inform your users about whatever it is that you want to like draw attention to there.
Cool. And I know we had been talking earlier, and I sort of asked about GDPR and how that does or doesn't relate to where your data is stored. And I'm sort of like confused about that. Does GDPR mean that you have to store a user's data in the country in which they're located?
There are lots of privacy regulations. GDPR does not specifically, well, I'm not a lawyer. I'll tell you my engineering understanding of this. GDPR does not specify anything about the locality of data, but there are other regulations that do that. And so if you have questions about where your data will be stored, we make all of that available in our privacy and security terms.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, again, we'll have those linked below so you can check out and really figure out where our data is located and can be located, and the Firebase console gives you some options on that as well.
And if you're creating a new Firestore project now, for example, we ask you where you want your data located. So if you want to use our European data centers, that is an option.
Yeah, good to know. That was a great rollout that we had.
Hopefully getting better all the time.
Yes. Was there anything else that you really want people to know about Firebase with GDPR and privacy?
I think the number one takeaway is to start designing for GDPR, which means design, or not specifically GDPR, but design for user privacy from the beginning. If you're starting a new feature with the idea that you'll eventually want to delete the data, you'll probably model your data differently than if you're only focusing on how to support your clients. So bring that in as an initial design constraint.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because I think one of the benefits of Firebase is it makes it really simple to spin up something quickly, but at the same time, you can't spend too much time thinking about your data structure. I think it's so important between privacy and deleting data, and also looking at security rules. Really spending the extra time up front to develop that design structure, I think will save you development time down the road.
We tried to make it easier for people. We've released some functions that will help you delete data and help you export data.
We'll link those below. So do we have any examples that get people started with user privacy?
I think a good example to look at is FriendlyPix. It's an app that is open source for web, iOS, and Android. It uses a data model that makes it really easy to delete user data, and we actually regularly delete user data every 30 days. It also has some consent flows built in. So if users are interested in how to build their own consent flows and what wording they can use, what UI components they should use, they can also take a look at the open source implementation.
Nice. Yeah, so FriendlyPix is a great place to start, because it really is like a full-fledged app. So if you ever have questions about how a lot of things can really work and what would be like an app that you would say publish to the App Store or to the Play Store, this gives you all the different details of it, and including things like privacy. So that's really exciting. So we got lots of great links for you to check out. We love to talk about all those things on the show, but we try to keep things brief, and these topics can go really deep. And when it comes to privacy, it's so niche to wherever you're located. Like you said, the rules are different, and there's all sorts of different things you can comply with. So definitely check out those links below, and check out all the resources that we have. So tell me, how did you get involved in GDPR?
I think we got involved because we both individually care about user privacy. Like, it was something that was important to us, and so when this was a thing that was that needed some work, we both jumped on this opportunity to like make user privacy more accessible to everybody that's building on Firebase.
And we recently also talked about user privacy at the Firebase Summit in Prague.
Oh, nice.
If users are more interested in this, they can take a look at our talk.
Yeah, so there's a whole talk on this, and we can link to that, and it's on the Firebase YouTube channel, showing some of this information and probably a little different information about GDPR and privacy as well.
Yep.
Thank you both so much for coming on the show and talking about this topic, especially because it's something I know nothing about, so it's great to have people on that have, done the work, so I don't have to.
Hopefully we're making it easy for everybody.
Yeah, and if you have questions about privacy, about GDPR, I want excuses to bring them back on the show, so be sure to post those questions on social media and hit them with the hashtag AskFirebase, and who knows, maybe we'll be back answering your question. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you on a future episode. GDPR!
It's awkward with 3 people.
Yeah. I feel like every kids show in the 90s would have ended with like, yeah. And
Oh, yeah,
everyone
we all
else, like,
jumped
go in
up.
the middle and freeze.